Monday, October 18th, and it is time for another edition of Mantra Monday. So this is a very, very special week. So I'm going to put the invitations right here in the chat box for my regular Facebook friends. I decided to do a live stream over here today that I don't normally do on my friend's feed because it's a special week, and the banner that I have up there, it's all about the 13th anniversary of yoga on the dance floor. So I've got all these special events coming up this week starting on Wednesday. So Wednesday is actually the unseen footage screening, which you'll notice at the bottom of the chat here, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. Then on Saturday, there is a live stream concert of yoga on the dance floor. That is October 23rd. It's going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard as requested. And then Thursday, there's going to be a live stream as well. So these are going to be like hour-and-a-half shows. I've been working on putting some visuals together for you. I'm going to use Streamlabs, so I'll be streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and I'm actually even going to try Twitch this time, right? Trying to step in and step it up. Also, there's some very auspicious things happening this week. Welcome to my office. There's some other auspicious things happening this week, and that is on Wednesday, October 20th. It is Sharad Purnima. So there's a full moon this Wednesday that is specifically related to Krishna Lila, the Rasa dance. So that is wonderfully auspicious. The other thing that's happening this week is that it kicks off the month of Kartik. So Kartik is a very, very auspicious month to perform any spiritual practices. I'm specifically also talking about bhakti yoga. So if you're fortunate enough to be in India, of course, any spiritual practices that you do there, especially in Vrindavan and any of the holy sites, is like magnified, I think at least 1,000 times, maybe even more than that. But still, those of us here in the West, we can perform that, and we begin Kartik with actually lighting a candle and singing the Dhamma Dastika prayers. Very auspicious. You know, I might even add that to Wednesday's show, somehow try and do a little homage and do a little of that for Wednesday. What else? I mean, Wednesday's screening, I should say. Maybe do a little pre-thing. Also, it is Diwali. Diwali is coming up. Now, does Diwali start this week? Actually, Diwali might start, don't hold me to this, but I think Diwali might start November 5th. So that is also the triumph of good over evil. It's specifically commemorating the conquering of Sri Lanka, specifically Ravana, by Ramachandra and Hanuman. So those of you who are into Hanumanji and Ram, Sita Ram, this will be a very poignant, wonderful date for you to go by. There's also a lighting of candles during that time, and readings of the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. Of course, Ravana was a big badass asura, a demon, and his name literally means to make others cry. He made the life of everyone in the universe a living hell. So we're quite happy when he was actually put down by Ramachandra and his famed monkey army. So now that we're becoming more aware and more conscious of other living entities and animals and what they're capable of and how sentient they are, then we're starting to get a clue that yes, these things are indeed possible. So today we are actually continuing on with the characteristics of King Puranjana. So King Puranjana represents the living entity. And up till now, King Puranjana, the allegory of King Puranjana, I should mention, is actually being explained by Narada Muni in the form of an allegory. It's being explained in the form of an allegory to King Prachinabarhishat. Basically, because King Prachinabarhishat, he knows that he is on the wrong path. He kind of knows that, because back in the day, the administrative class, or Kshatriyas, actually had spiritual training. They might not have been fully versed like the Brahmins. You know, a Brahmin is essentially someone who studies Brahman, right? He studies the absolute truth and its aspects. He studies cosmic law. So Kshatriyas are generally very absorbed in affairs of the state, right? Protecting and collecting taxes and distributing wealth and taking care of public works. But also they were spiritually responsible, meaning if there was anything amiss in the kingdom, then they were actually responsible for that. Not only, yes, materially responsible, but actually spiritually responsible. They knew that, meaning that they would be suffering reactions for any unsavory goings on in the domain of their responsibilities. So this is the framework of what we're talking about. King Puranjana in this allegory represents us. He represents a soul. He represents the living entity who is embodied, dehine, who is embodied in the material body. And he has spent a long time wandering, throughout the universe, looking for a suitable home, right? So the living entity, the spirit soul, us, after we leave the spiritual world, basically we're trying to find something that matches the experience that we had in the spiritual world, but without God, because we want to be God. We want to have everything the way we want it to have, right? Because we think we're so intelligent and we're so smart. Of course, we're not. But Krishna, being kind, he gives us this facility of manifesting the entire material universe, which is quite vast, not as big as a spiritual world. But anyway, we wander and we go from place to place to place to place, trying to find a suitable place to live. So in this allegory, King Puranjana has been wandering, and finally he comes to the city of 9 gates. You'll see the title up here is the city of 9 gates also. The city of 9 gates, again, is the material body. So that the 9 gates of our city are the mouth, the 2 nostrils, the 2 eyes, the 2 ear holes, the genitals, and the anus to evacuate. So we have also, we also have our, we have these different senses. We have different knowledge gathering senses also, which also actually include our skin. So all these sensations of smell, hearing, touch, taste. This is how the living entity, of course, the sexual organs, and even evacuating. Prabhupada used to say that happiness in the material world means passing stool. If you're constipated, you're not having such a good time here. Actually, if you're chronically constipated, you're going to get colon cancer. But yeah, so enjoyment here is always really a kind of a sense of relief. So today we are up to text 33. If you look in the description, again, at least on YouTube and on Facebook, you'll be able to see the Sanskrit. So I'll read the Sanskrit first, and I read the translation, and then I should say the word-for-word synonyms, the translation, the purport, and then I try and give some some insight or some realization into what I have. So shout out to Kafunya Ife, because I'm really doing this chapter because of Kafunya. Okay. Na vidāma vayam samyak kartāram purus ātmanaś parasyāpi gotram nāma yat-kr. Sanskrit, Devanagari, is a very purifying language, and all the Vedas are written in this language. Na vidāma vayam samyak kartāram purusharshaba ātmanaś parasyapi gotram nāma yat-kr. Na vidāma vayam samyak kartāram purusharshaba ātmanaś parasyapi gotram nāma yat-kr. Na vidāma vayam samyak kartāram purusharshaba ātmanaś parasyapi gotram nāma yat-kr. Word for word. Synonyms. Na, do not. Vidāma, no. Vayam, I. Samyak, perfectly. Kartāram, maker. Purusharshaba, O best of human beings. Ātmanah, of myself. Cha, and. Parasya, of others. Api, also. Gotram, family history. Nāma, name. Cha, and. Yat-kr, which has been made by whom. Translation. The girl said, O best of human beings, I do not know who has begotten me. I cannot speak to you perfectly about this, nor do I know the names or the origin of the associates with me. So, in this allegory, the girl represents the intelligence. So, the living entity, the soul, needs the intelligence to be able to actually interact with the external world and with his own body, with his own self in the material world and the confines in this, in this reality. So just so you know who this girl is. Okay, the girl said, O best of human beings, I do not know who has begotten me. I cannot speak to you perfectly about this, nor do I know the names or the origins of the associates with me. The living entity is ignorant of his origin. He does not know why this material world was created, why others are working in this material world, and what the ultimate source of this manifestation is. No one knows the answers to these questions, and this is called ignorance. By researching into the origin of life, important scientists are finding some chemical compositions or cellular combinations, but actually no one knows the original source of life within this material world. The phrase brahma jijñāsā is used to indicate an inquisitiveness to know the original source of our existence in this material world. No philosopher, scientist, or politician actually knows wherefrom we have come, why we are here struggling so hard for existence, and where we will go. Generally, people are of the opinion that we are all here accidentally, and that as soon as these bodies are finished, all our dramatic activities will be finished, and we will become zero. Such scientists and philosophers are impersonalists and voidists, nirvisesha sunyavadi, right? In this verse, the girl is expressing the actual position of the living entity. She cannot tell Puranjana her father's name because she does not know from where she has come, nor does she know why she is present in that place. She frankly says that she does not know anything about all this. This is the position of the living entity in the material world. There are so many scientists, philosophers, and big leaders, but They do not know wherefrom they have come, nor do they know why they are busy within this material world to obtain a position of so-called happiness. In this material world, we have many nice facilities for living, but we are so foolish that we do not ask who has made this world habitable for us and has arranged it so nicely. Everything is functioning in order, but people foolishly think that they are produced by chance in this material world and that after death they will become zero. They think that this beautiful place of habitation will automatically remain. Okay, there is a lot to unpack here, but these thoughts are common, right? In the Western world, this kind of line of thinking that everything came from nothing and that we aren't significant and what we do doesn't really matter and we're going to die anyway, but when we die, uh, we we go back to nothing. Doesn't really make any sense when you think about it. So, true, the material world is temporary. It's true that our activities here are temporary, but it does not mean that this life is not important, and it does not mean that what we do is insignificant. For those who are just tuning in, who haven't heard this before, I want to explain who the associates that the girl or the intelligence is referring to. She is referring to the 10 senses. She's referring to the mind. She's referring to the 10 senses. She's referring to the life heirs, which is represented as a snake with 5 hoods, because we have 5 significant life heirs. And also she's accompanied by hundreds of women, right? Hundreds of servants. So these hundreds of servants or women, they represent 10 servants, and each servant had hundreds of wives accompanying him. So this represents all the material desires that we have. So for every sense organ that we have, the tongue, the eyes, taste, the skin, smell, there are literally, like millions of desires that we have that go along with that. I mean, in fact, most of us spend our whole lives pursuing sense gratification. In other words, we want to go to so many different restaurants to satisfy the tongue and to try different kinds of foods, right? Or we want to travel to so many different countries because we want to take in the sights. We want to see, right? Or we want to go to botanical gardens, for example, because we want to smell so many different types of things. Or, we have skin. We want to touch so many different things, notably, usually the things that we want to touch the most are the opposite sex. We have so many desires for sense pleasures, right, that we perceive through the skin, through the genitals, and so on and so forth. So these are the associates that are accompanying the intelligence, right? So you have the mind, you have the senses that are grouped around the mind, depending on the kind of body that you have, right? If you're a spider, or if you're a horse, or if you're a dog or a cat, it's going to vary, right? In human being, the intelligence is supposed to be more developed, right? I say supposed to be more developed. So I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so let's break down what Prabhupada has to say here. So essentially, when we come into this world, we don't know anything, right? Especially, after you come through the birth canal and go through that traumatic experience of being born, pretty much anything that you might have remembered, maybe from a previous lifetime, is pretty much completely squeezed out, at least in the conscious mind, because of the trauma. And then your parents raise you, they have no memory, usually, of a previous lifetime, and you're really brought up in ignorance. You're not, it's not explained to us in school that the soul is separate from the body, right? That material life is conditional, that we actually need to learn to become steady within happiness and distress, that our life is not merely based on externals, that there is actually merit in learning how to control the senses and how to control the mind and the tongue and the genitals, because this can help us become more peaceful and more centered, right? How not to be pushed by different emotions like anger. Anger is a very strong one, right? Anger, lust, greed, all these different things that manipulate us here in the conditional world. We're not really taught how to appreciate the different material energies and how they are working here. I mean, in indigenous cultures, this was, standard knowledge, right? That you would learn how to respect the elements, and that you would actually see the elements and other living entities as having personality, as being a living forces, as being different things that shaped your life, that personalities that you could actually even have a relationship with, that in fact you did have a relationship with, and that needed to be honored and respected, right? Maybe not completely understood, but honored and respected. So there is that. In the West, by and large, we don't respect, right? We don't understand. We're not trying to understand. So Brahma, grandfather Brahma, for those who are familiar, the first thing that he did after he tried to understand things empirically by climbing down the lotus flower and then going up the lotus flower, right, and realizing that he was in darkness, he was on the causal ocean, and he appeared to be alone, was that he heard the word tapa, which means austerity. So he was intelligent, right? Lord Brahma has more heads than we do, and he sat in meditation. He sat in meditation, became still, to understand who he was, where did he come from, what was his purpose in life. And after some time, Krishna revealed himself to Lord Brahma, right, and enlightened him. So we have this example, right? Of course, the Yuga Dharma in this age, we don't really have time to sit still in meditation for hundreds of thousands of years. We don't live that long. We're lucky if we live to be 100, right? And with all our faculties. But most people are dropping off. Many people are dropping off in their 50s or their 60s, due to these ravages of disease, cancer and diabetes and so on and so forth. So in this age, we've actually been given the Maha Mantra to chant, which is the express method of self-realization. And it's also a lot of fun, right? We can sing, we can chant, we can dance with others. It's a great social activity, and it also changes the atmosphere on this planet. That's the reason why I wanted to create the album Yoga on the Dance Floor. That's the whole reason why, is because I thought, you know what? Everyone just wants to have a good time. I want to have a good time too. And we are living in times that are decidedly not good, right? But in spite of that, that's our MO. We want to party. So this is the way to party in this age, while changing things for the better, and coming in touch with yourself quickly. So this whole purport, no one knows the answers to these questions, and this is called ignorance. By researching into the origin of life, important scientists are finding some chemical compositions or cellular combinations, but actually no one knows the original source of life within this material world. So that is to say, you can only understand so much by your material senses. Right, here's the intelligence, right? The intelligence in and of itself can only understand so much through research through the material senses. But if you cut certain things off, like the light in the room, for example, because we're dependent on light to see, or if you cannot hear, or these different things, then suddenly, there's a whole bunch of information that is not available to you in that way. The senses are limited and they are fallible. It's like trying to look into a room through the keyhole of a door. You can't see the whole room. So the Vedas, or the Shabda Brahma, this transcendental sound vibration, which is emanating from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is directly descending from the spiritual world in the form of Vedic knowledge, and also there are other bona fide scriptures around the world. But the Vedas are extremely, extremely special. And there's so many mantras and there's so many prayers. This tradition, somehow or another, has remained largely intact through millions and millions and millions of years, probably because it was passed down orally for a very, very long time and was codified by Srila Vyasadeva. So we should be inquisitive. We should be inquisitive to understand who we are, what our purpose in life is. Of course, this is a big thing right now, right? Find out your why. At least people are being motivated, and prompted, like through people like Tony Robbins, for example. I'm trying to think of who else. Let's see, there's a woman named, what's her name? Gina, Mother Gina, School of Feminine Arts. There are these impetuses now, to try and find our why. But this is like the ultimate find our why. Yes, it's important to understand your psychophysical nature. Very important. Because if you understand your psychophysical nature, the work, the occupation that you're inclined to, you're going to be a lot happier in life. You're going to be more contented because you're going to find an occupation and a job that suits you, right? So many people are doing jobs that they can't stand, that they don't like, that don't suit them, right? So every day, their life is miserable. It's like a hell. So that's very important. But once you find out what that is, then the great success for a human being is actually learning how to dovetail that in karma yoga, right? Yoga in action in your everyday life for the ultimate satisfaction of Brahman, of the absolute truth, of in service of that personal relationship that we have with the supreme absolute truth. And that way our life becomes perfect, right? We become joyful, right? We don't become tossed around by the waves of life, the vicissitudes of life, the ups and downs. It's not that we don't have feelings. It's not that we don't have emotions. It's not that we don't have compassion. Actually, a Vaishnava has great compassion for others and for the suffering of others. But we develop some detachment from that. We don't I overly identify with the material body because we know that at the end of our lifetime, when our lifetime has run its course, we're going to give up this particular set of clothes and we're going to change it for another set of clothes, right? Dehinosmin yatha dehe komaram yovanam jara tatra dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. Just as the embodied soul passes from youth to boyhood, girlhood, to old age, so the soul at the time of death similarly passes into another body, giving up, this old and useless body, jara, right? Dhiras tatra namuyati. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change, right? But the trick in yoga is not simply to keep changing bodies and changing bodies and changing bodies. the trick or the goal, the uttama shloka in yoga, is that we actually want to exit this material world and we want to go back to our original home, back to Godhead, where we don't have to undergo this constant change and separation and profound sorrow that we experience here. We want to be reinstated in our original position of Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, our original form, spiritualized body, where we are experiencing unending bliss. We are fully knowledgeable and we are completely happy. It's our nature to seek happiness. That's our nature. That's why we spend so much time trying to pursue happiness. It's even in the Constitution of the United States of America. It's actually written in there, right? And the freedom, in the pursuit of happiness, in the pursuit of happiness. And I think that is a very telling word. Okay. So this is also pointing out that basically the ignorance of society. So, we have politicians and industrialists and businessmen and so many things. And generally, these people are interested in power. They're interested in making money. They're interested in gaining a lot of followers so they can maintain their positions. But without spiritual knowledge, without this seeking and understanding of spiritual knowledge, where you actually understand that you are equal to everyone, that you are actually not better than anyone. This is true social justice. Then it's just it's the blind leading the blind. People are blindly following leaders, hoping that they're going to live up to their promises. The leaders can't, won't, or don't, and then everyone falls into a ditch again and again and again. We see this over and over and over again, especially in politics. And then people are frustrated and disappointed, and people become morose. The other thing that is really striking me here is this section that says, generally, people are of the opinion that we are all here accidentally, and that as soon as these bodies are finished, all our dramatic activities will be finished and we will become zero. So Prabhupada would say that this is due to a poor fund of knowledge, because we're actually not educated enough, or if at all, again, about the difference between matter and spirit and the actual nature of the spiritual world and the material world. We're not learning these things side by side, that we become bewildered, right? This life can be very, very confusing. It's hard to understand ourselves, what to speak of trying to understand other people, what to speak of trying to understand all these crazy goings-ons in the world and why they're going on, right? This is very, very difficult. Most people are just trying to get through their day and make a living and put food on the table, right? So we can come to the conclusion that everything is just an accident, right? That there's no ultimate purpose to everything, kind of throw our hands up in despair, say, screw it, I'm going to die anyway, and then just die not knowing where we're going. But if you've ever been with a person who is dying and actually doesn't know where they're going, it's very sad. It's actually very disturbing and very sad. There can be a lot of fear around the process of dying. It doesn't have to be that way, but there is a lot of that, because if you've only identified with your body and you don't know how to control your thoughts, then you don't know where you're going. Then it's fearful. And what's the greatest fear? Prahlad Maharaj said the greatest fear is falling back into this cycle of samsara and birth and death. So after all this drum and drang and everything that we go through here and battling through life and trying to pay off our mortgage or our student debt, or, trying to get some peace and some justice and all of that, then after all these dramatic activities, we pass away. Well, what happens? What happens? Because we are the makers of our own destiny. I mean, yoga is actually very much about self-empowerment. It's very, very important, because as a man thinketh, so is he, right? What we're thinking, that shapes our lives. Either we're drifting aimlessly or we are headed to a specific goal. So here we are, the intelligence in the form being represented by this girl. She's being frank, at least. She doesn't know how she got here. She doesn't know who made her. She doesn't know, even why she's so busy. She doesn't even know. So it's important to take the time to self-reflect. So we have a lot of nice things here compared to most people in the world. Many of us do. But life is not just about having nice things. Can't take it with you. Those of us who are getting older and are moving up into our 50s and our 60s and our 70s, we're starting to realize, my God, I've got all this stuff. I've got a garage full of stuff. What am I going to do with it all? Unless you've got some immediate family members that might be interested in those things, that stuff is going away. It's going to the Salvation Army or whatever. You realize you can't take all of it with you. As much as you're sentimentally attached to it, you can't. All right, so now I'm going to read text 34. Oh, I also want to mention that there's going to be some surprises this week revolving around the 13th anniversary of Yoga on the Dance Floor. So if you're on my mailing list, please keep an eye out for that, because you guys get first dibs on this very, very special offer. Okay, just wanted to mention that. Text 34. Ihadya santam ātmanam vidāma na param yenayam nirmita vira puri sharanam ātmanah. Iha, here, adya, today, shantam, existing, ātmanam, living entities, vidāma, that much we know, not, param, beyond, param, beyond that, yena, by whom, iyam, this, nirmita, created, vira, O great hero, puri, city, sharanam, resting place, ātmanah, of all living entities. Translation: O great hero, we only know that we are existing in this place. We do not know what will come after. Indeed, we are so foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. Purport. This lack of Krishna consciousness is called ignorance. In Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, it is called parabhava stavad abodha jataha. Everyone is born ignorant. The Bhāgavatam therefore says that we are all born ignorant within this material world. In our ignorance, we may create nationalism, philanthropy, internationalism, science, philosophy, and so many other things. The basic principle behind all these is ignorance. What then is the value of all this advancement of knowledge if the basic principle is ignorance? Unless a person comes to Krishna consciousness, all of his activities are defeated. The human form of life is especially meant to dissipate ignorance, but without understanding how to dissipate ignorance, people are planning and building many things. After death, however, all of this is finished. So this is very poignant, right? When you think about it, when, like, I'm a history buff. I love history, and I love the history of, different civilizations. And, the thing that, and we only know a fraction, let's face it, we only know a fraction of all the civilizations that have existed on this planet, right? Um, oftentimes the one that is most prominent, of course, is like Rome, right? The fall of Rome, the fall of ancient Greece, the fall of Egypt, the fall of Benin, the fall of ancient China, the fall of Mesopotamia, Sumeria, uh, the fall of, Alexander the Great's conquests, the fall, I mean, the history of humanity is about the fall of different civilizations, one after the other, no matter how mighty and how strong they thought they were and that they were going to be. This is the agency of time that basically, wears everything down in the material world. Things crumble and fall apart. Knowledge is lost. So it's very instructive to understand that we should be grateful, of course, that we have the human form of life. It's a very, very rare and precious gift, right? But we need to learn how to use it in the best way. Uh, being aware of these things is wonderful, but if we don't actually understand, what the goal of life, all our material advancements ultimately turn to dust. Yes, science is important. Science has done a lot for us. Uh, Architecture, agriculture, so many different things. But without the understanding ultimately of what the purpose of life is, it's not very satisfying. It's actually not satisfying. So this is where this concept of varna ashram dharma comes in. Dharma means occupation of the living entity. There's Sanatana Dharma, and then there is varna ashram dharma. Sanatana Dharma is the eternal occupation of the living entity of the spirit soul, which is to serve, and love the supreme absolute truth, which is to serve and love God, right? If you can serve and love God and actually realize what that means, then you can actually love everyone and everything else, or at least offer respect, proper respect, and live your life in the mode of goodness. Varna ashram, dharma, that means understanding your occupational duty within your ashram, within your living situation, which is giving you shelter at a certain stage of life. Are you single? Are you a celibate student? Are you married? Are you a retiree? Are you a renunciate? All these different ashrams afford us shelter depending on the stage of life we are. And then how we all work together in society as a social body, right? So a body has a head, it has arms to protect itself, it has a stomach, right? Body runs on the stomach, it needs nourishment, and then it has the legs and feet that it stands on. So this represents all the classes of society and how we are supposed to work together. But the head is the head. And so there needs to be a guidance of society ultimately for the benefit of everyone and everything, gently, knowledgeably, respectfully, appreciatively. Just like, again, King Purchinabharhi shot. I'll show you the cover of this, and then we're going to wrap it up here. There's King Purchinabharhi shot. Look at him. This is his palace room. He's sitting on a beautiful vyāsasan. The vyāsasan is golden. It's bedecked with jewels. He's got a golden crown on his head. He's got beautiful armbands on. He's wearing silk garments. He's probably got a really expensive necklace on, right? But he's listening to Narada Muni. Narada Muni, he has his hand up in this mudra, right, of instruction, right? You even see that in the paintings of Christ. You will see that Christ has his hand up in a mudra of instruction, and he is instructing this kshatriya, right, this administrator, the king, who is actually considered to be the arms of society, not the head of society, but the arms of society, how to right his wrongs. King Puranjana has been hunting animals for no reason. He has been going out to the forest and he has been killing them. He's been killing too many of them and he's letting them die a cruel death. And Narada Muni says, look up into the sky, because Narada Muni has spiritual vision. He can see the past, the present, and the future. He can see spiritual things. He can see all kinds of things that many cannot see. And he says, look up into the sky. Do you see all those spirits in the sky? Those are all the animals that you kill. They're just simply waiting for you to die so they can gore you and torture you the way you tortured them. There is payback for what you have done. There's payback for what you have done here. So it's very good that you were interested. It's very good that you were interested in righting your wrongs. It's very good that you have become, woke enough and aware enough to understand that something is amiss in your kingdom and that you are responsible. So I'm going to explain to you, what awaits you on the other side, the spiritual justice. There is spiritual justice that occurs in the universe. We can't just do whatever we want with impunity. We can't hurt others and hurt the other living entities and not think there isn't going to be a reaction for it. There is a reaction for it. There's a reaction for it quite clearly on this side of the game, but there's also a reaction for it on the other side of the veil, right? So spiritual life is about becoming educated on how to move through this world gently, wisely, with equanimity and equipoise. This is a challenge for us. It has been a challenge for me, but hopefully, as we mature and we feed our intelligence by doing things like Mantra Monday and getting together and hearing together from Paritranaya Sadhunam, right? By the great sages, who are actually self-realized and who have seen the truth, by hearing, by trying to render some service to them, that they become inclined towards us, they become merciful towards us, and instruct us on how we can advance in our spiritual life on this earth planet and make it a success. And I think now more than ever, we need to do that. I was just watching last night, finally, the very poignant realization of William Shatner, the 90-year-old, going up into space and looking down and appreciating how precious life is on this planet and how precious the human form of life is. And the contrast with that, as he put it, with cold, dark space. He says, I couldn't see the stars up there. It was just like blackness and death, right? So, he was given that that gift, that realization, to bring back that message, to say, hey, we've got something really precious. We've been given something very, very special here, and we're killing it, and we're killing ourselves in the process. And what's even worse about that is that we are, for our children and our children's children, this earth planet is a place where we come to learn, but we want to respect it because, of course, planet Earth is the Lord's body. All right. So thank you so much for watching this and for dropping a comment. I realize that not everyone can tune in this early on a Monday morning, but I really, really appreciate, you being here, whether you're here now or whether you're here later. And please go ahead and RSVP for Wednesday's events and Thursday and Saturday's events. It's going to be a great week. I wish that we could be in person and, get on down and party the way we used to, and all the nightclubs and stuff like Cielo, and shout out to Bowery Electric, shout out to the old loft in Brooklyn with Dynasty Electric, shout out to the Howl Festival, shout out to the C Note, shout out to Mystic Yoga Shala, shout out to my God, so many places that I got to perform in person. So, but we adapt and change with the times. Okay. Blessings to you. Have a great rest of your week.